What do you do when you get objections during the sales process? Freak out, get nervous, get insecure, all the above, right? So I'm answering today a question I get a lot. What do I do when I get objections? What do I say if someone asks me this in a sales call? Exactly what to say to sales objections in this episode. Hit subscribe for weekly videos about how to grow your consulting business and click the bell for notifications of future episodes. This season, I'm answering your questions, and the one that I am answering today is about objections. What do I do when I hear objections in the sales process? What do I say if they say, I can't afford it, or I don't believe you, or does it really work? I know a lot of times we'll get jammed up. I had this vision of how my sales call would go and how the sales process would go, and I never expected this part to happen. What do we do when something unexpected happens in these sales calls? I'm not going to do the definitive guide on objections. I'm not going to cover absolutely every single objection that they might have, because I think what's more important is for you to understand the principles behind them. What are objections? Why do they come up? And what should you do just broadly as a strategy when you hear objections in sales conversations? I think it's going to be much more helpful for you than any specific individual answer, although let me know if you'd like me to cover that in a future episode. So in researching this episode, I was lucky enough to have some in-person time with my brother. He and I live in different states, but I'm visiting home. But I had a chance to explore the topic of objections with him. And he, like me, was first of all very lit up by this. Oh, this is like a super exciting topic. Every time I would surface an objection, he would say, well, that's a buying signal. And this is the blanket takeaway good news that I want you to hear, is that when you hear these things in a sales conversation, it's a buying signal. It means somebody is working on processing, how do I get from where I am now to enrolling with you, to purchasing your program, your services. It's a buying signal. Isn't that amazing? We think of objections as like, slow down, stop, let's not do this, I'm out. Objections mean I don't want it, but it's actually the opposite. Very often, if you're in sales conversation with someone, they're in the process of figuring out, how do I work with you? How do I solve my problem? I have said before, when someone gets on a sales call with you, they hope, wish, and pray you are the last person they need to talk to about this. They really want to close this loop. No one wants to be in the hiring a consultant process. No one wants to be figuring out, how do we solve our expensive problem here? Can you just be the one who can do this for us, they think, when they get on a call? I sure hope this is the one. I don't want to have another 35 years of searching for the right person. So we hope you're the end of the line. So when you're hearing objections, quote unquote, objections, these are ways for a person to figure out, they're letting you know, here's what I need to overcome in order to make this work for me. So they are actually good news. If you think of them as buying signals, then the other thing you can do is say, okay, so someone says, I can't afford it. In what way is that a buying signal? If I put myself in their shoes, they're thinking, I can't afford it. My thought is that they might be saying, dag, I wish it was cheaper. I didn't want it to be that much. Oh, wow, that's a lot of money. I'm surprised. All of those things that they're thinking, none of those is, no, I'm not doing this. If they're thinking, no, I'm not doing this, they usually hang up, leave the meeting, say, thank you for your time, or something like that. Those things are closing. Those are not buying signals. Those are ending a meeting and going away. A buying signal is, I say something like, I can't afford it, or, wow, that's expensive, but then I remain here sitting with you, waiting for something to happen. That part of the waiting is the buying signal. Your assignment from here, think about what those are for your potential clients. Before I go on, I want to talk about one thing that I think philosophically is important in the way that I teach you to enroll or to sell, as opposed to what others may do. If you're taking a general sales class, or if you've seen sales tips on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, I've seen people do demonstrations of addressing every single objection with the equivalent to me of, what is it going to cost for us to get you into this car this weekend? You're like, what's it going to take for us to do whatever? And I feel like I don't want to enroll people that I'm going to have those kinds of concessions made for. And I don't want that for you either. So what I want you to keep in mind is, you're only going to work with perfect clients. And so we don't want to try so hard to enroll someone that we end up with somebody who isn't, in fact, a perfect client. I don't want us to make a million zillion concessions of like, well, we'll definitely do it your way. If you remember, when I talk about sales, my philosophy is, we do something that is in the highest good of all concerned. It means it's in the client's highest good, it's in your highest good, and the highest good of everyone who is served by that client. So for example, If you're doing an organizational behavior study in order to solve some problems that they're having in the workplace, then enrolling you means it's in your highest good, this agreement to work with you, and it's in the highest good of the person who has brought you in, whether that's the HR person or VP of culture or whoever that is. And it's in the highest good of the people in the organization, possibly even the people they serve, their end customers or users. I don't want to do anything ever that compromises everybody along there. So if I make a deal just so I can make sure I close this client, then a lot of compromises get made, which I think are going to end up making you sorry you're working with that client. Philosophical point number 2, when you are enrolling somebody, this whole sales process, whether it's a single sales call or whether it's 5 different meetings over 6 months with various stakeholders, you're already working as if you're working with that client. So I want your behavior to align with the way that you work when you're consulting, when you're leading, when you're running the show. I want you in that behavior already in the sales process. So you have to stay in integrity with who you are as a leader. For example, if somebody says something, and as a coach, you always want to address like the elephant in the room. You always want to address like, that was an unusual thing that you said, or that was kind of conflictual or passive aggressive. Like whatever is your behavior as a leader and as a coach, be doing that in the sales process. So if somebody says something out of left field and you're like, well, normally I would address that, but I really want to close this client right now. Don't. I want later on, 6 months down the road, when you're talking about being in integrity, I don't want anybody to say, well, you did that one thing when you were trying to sell us. I want that behavior. I want you to be able to point back to your sales meetings as you, in your frank and serious and direct mode, or whatever is your personality style. I want that to align with who you are as a coach or a consultant or a leader. However you're being with your clients, be that way in those sales meetings. So we've covered that objections are a buying signal. Here's the second thing, and I don't know if this is good news or bad news. I feel like it's good news to me, but it might be bad news to some people. Objections are a mirror of your degree of being sold or confident on your own offer. Okay, so that means if you're getting objections like, does this really work? I really think this is going to work. Or I don't know. Now that I think about it, I don't think our situation's that bad. All of those objections that you get, they speak to your own confidence. So the objections that you get or don't get tell you what parts of your offer you're confident about. When people are new in their work with me, they'll bring back feedback from their sales calls. And a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm not paying that. That's the objection they're getting. Oh, that price is crazy. Oh, I'm not. Oh, what are you even? Oh my God, that's so expensive. They'll get a lot of pushback on price because they themselves are not yet sold on that. As you know, I teach to offer transformational engagements. That means they're at least a year long and they are at least $100,000 in value, which means $8,500, $10,000 a month, so that they're about $120,000 a year. That's the way I'm teaching. But very often someone will come back to me and say, I can only sell it for 3 months at a time. No one will buy anything that's more than 3 months. And I'm like, well, you're not sold on why you need to do it for 12 months. You're not sold that that's the right duration. So as soon as you're sold that that's the truth, and that's the only way to do it, then everybody will enroll with you that way. So whatever you're getting back as those objections are showing you your status with your own offers. So your action step from here, just track. Go back and think about like when somebody didn't close or when they did close, but it was really hard. What was the pushback that you were getting? It'll be unique to you and unique to your situation. It's not that you will never not get objections. You're probably always going to get objections during the sales process. Your perfect clients will have unique objections. They'll have objections that are unique to them that not perfect clients won't have, right? So if you have somebody come in and they've snuck through your filters, you're talking to them, you're realizing, well, oh, I see. They're not exactly going to be a great fit, but I'll go ahead and talk to them. Like maybe we can work something out, blah, blah, blah. And you get some objections from them. You can tell by the objections you get whether somebody's a fit for you or not. How long is this going to take? I really didn't want to involve all levels of the leaders because could we just blah, 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 that kind of thing. That's when you're going to hear, not a fit for you. This is not going to be a good working relationship. They'll have objections which will out them or reveal them to be not a good fit for you, not your client. Now, if you overlook that and you close them anyway, joke's going to be on you because you're going to have a really difficult time working with the not perfect clients. what is happening during the objections process when they're throwing out these kinds of questions and terms and things like that. One of my longest enrollment processes was with a client who I've been working with for a really long time. So I'm so glad I stayed in integrity the whole time, even though, boy, it would have been easy to get frustrated. It seemed like absolutely every time an objection would get settled and resolved. So she would speak to her fear of, is this really going to work for me? And we would talk through that, and we would talk about how I would support her in that, and times that she had really shown up for herself and that things had worked. So she had a track record of success that she knew, and I have a track record. And so that was going to work. And then the next call would come up when I would think everything was good and we were about to close and decide to work together. And she would say, I'm really concerned about the timing. The timeline is too long. And we would work through that. And then the next thing would come up and it would be like, this is more money than I've ever spent on anything my entire life. And we would work on that thing. There was this ongoing series of objections that we worked through over like 5 calls. It took a really, really, really long time. I worked really hard not to get frustrated with it and to really just stay with her as a coach who was coaching her through concerns and fears. Can I do this? What happens if it succeeds? What happens if it doesn't? What is happening during all of that is that she was processing the information. This entire series of information is her processing. What if I do this? What if I don't do this? What's going to happen? So objections are your perfect potential clients processing externally, aloud, together, interactively with you, how things are going to go for them. And if they can do this, if they're in or not. So that leads me to my last point here. What do we do when they voice an objection? The worst possible thing you can do is get rattled or triggered. My God, I would hope they wouldn't say that. Now, this is what's wonderful is I could go through specific objections with you, and I've named a few of them. I can't afford it, or what if this doesn't work, or what if it worked for everybody else you've ever worked with, but not for me? Like all of the things that they might potentially say. But for each of us, there's always that one thing that we hope they don't ask. And I want you to write that down and role play it to within an inch of its life with a colleague, a coach. Join my program, role play it with me. I do role plays all the time. And here's the thing that I'm asking always is, what's the thing you hope and wish and pray they do not say on a sales call? Oh, please don't ask me how much I've done this. Oh, please don't ask me if this has ever worked before. Oh my gosh, I hope nobody ever asks me this because I don't feel good about my answer to it. That's going to be like a magnet or like a super magnet. They're going to home in on the thing that you hope they don't ask, and they're going to go like a laser beam towards it. When you've worked through all your stuff, they won't ask you questions that are going to startle or surprise you. They just won't, because you don't have a charge around it that's causing their sensors to like seek that out within you. So what do we do when we've really practiced this stuff and we're doing a great job with objections? What do I want you to do in those moments? We've gone through our process, we're talking, and then they say something like, well, that seems like it's going to take a long time. Okay. I don't go, it's not going to take a long time. Here are the 3 reasons why it's not going to take a long time. It is going to take a long time. And because you don't know. And also because I've done this before. Blah, blah, blah. It's not about an argument. We don't win in sales by tamping down, by the preponderance of evidence, by like slamming down their argument. That's not how you win in sales. The thing that you're going to do is get curious. Curious. My brother also supported and loved this idea. Yes, you get curious. When someone has an objection, what you're going to do is say, interesting. Why does that seem like a long time? Or, I'm curious. You said that seems like a really long time. Tell me a little more about that. And then we let them share why that came up for them. I'm sincerely curious, like, why did they think that? What about it seems like a long time? Does it seem like a long time relative to what they expected? Does it seem like objectively a long time? Does it seem like, oh, wow, I hope this would go away fast? Like, what is the deal? If they say something like, oh my gosh, that's way more than I expected it to be. I don't go, oh, how dare you? Don't you think I'm that valuable? I have a lot of clients who get triggered by potential clients who mirror back that something is expensive, as if they feel they've been told you're not worth that. You aren't worth that. How can you be charging so much money? Who do you think you are? That's not what they said. That is not what they said. What they said was, wow, that's a lot of money. That's more expensive than I thought it was going to be. What do we do in that moment? Get curious. How do I get curious about that? Interesting. Oh, I'm curious. You said that seems like a lot of money. Then I stop talking and I start listening. Or I say, tell me more about that. whatever is your calm, non-confrontational, and curious way to ask about the thing, ask about it. You're going to discover all kinds of cool stuff. There are questions behind the objection. There are questions, there are assumptions. There's all kinds of stuff that you wish you knew about in the sales process when you hear those objections. And you're probably going to get them all along the way, and you want to make sure you've gotten them earlier than later. So be offering information that gives them a chance to respond and invite those questions or quote unquote so-called objections. Fun fact, you should only get certain kinds of objections in your sales calls because your marketing's job is to eliminate many, many, many objections. If your marketing is doing its job and you can be strategically sending out this information to potential clients before they get on that call, will it work? You send out proof. You send out testimonials and case studies. A lot of your marketing and your content creation is going to be case studies. It's going to be examples of how your stuff has worked. So when they get on a call, they're less likely to say, I don't believe this works at all. And they're more likely to say something like, well, I saw all of your case studies and I've read everything that you sent out about how you've worked with other people, but I'm just wondering, have you ever worked with anyone like me? And I mean, this is my unique situation. Do you think it's going to work for me? Now, that is a common question of a perfect potential client. It's somebody who says, I really want to get an A. I really want to be your best student ever. I think I'm like the other people that you've talked about. I want to make sure that you think that I'm like them. Do you believe that I could get those results? Very often is what a potential client will ask me. So if you're listening, you can hear it's about them and it's not about you. Every single one of these objections is going to be about them and not about you. When they say, I can't afford it, very often, especially if you've sprung the price on them and you haven't given them a chance to get an idea, you haven't given them a range, you haven't talked to them about to give them ideas about like what kind of ballpark this would be in. If you just spring a price on them and they're surprised by it and they say something like, I can't afford that or that's expensive, sometimes they'll be mad when they voice objections. And that's because they're disappointed. That's so expensive, they might say. Oh, that's so expensive. And you feel like, oh my God, they're like mad at me and they really think I'm not worth it. They really think this, how dare I, and things like that. Well, what if they're just really disappointed because they really wanted this and it's a lot more than they were hoping it was going to be, or they were telling themselves it was going to be something different. So that transference onto you doesn't mean you're bad and wrong. It means, oh, I'm so disappointed. I really wanted this. That's a really strong buying signal. The more emotion is in those objections, the more of a buying signal it is. So curiosity is a great way to figure out what's really behind it and to see if you can find common ground in this. Remember, I want it to be in the highest good of all concerned. So when you then talk about, is there another way that you can work together? An agreement you can come to? Is there some way that you can get there? All of those things, those compromises, I want you to first be sure you have all of the relevant information before you move on to something like that. And you don't have to immediately move to compromise, by the way. I have many times sold in my full package at the full value to someone who voiced all the objections in the beginning and just needed to be escorted piece by piece through, yes, this will work. Yes, this will work for you. Yes, this is the right time for you to do this. But she has to work through this herself. They, your potential clients in this sales discovery process, they have to be working through these decisions themselves. And you're escorting them through that. And that is why I love the intimacy level of sales calls and the trust that we create with these potential clients while we're on those calls. It's a beautiful process, and you can come to an agreement to work together. And when you do look at this firm foundation, you've already gone through this thing, and it may have felt tense, and it may have felt conflictual. It may have felt like it almost wasn't going to happen. But if you have been able to be stable during the turbulence, it doesn't have to be your turbulence. Don't engage in the turbulence. If you've been able to be stable during that conversation, then you've laid the groundwork for an amazing work relationship where there will be trust, where you can talk about tense things, where they can bring to you their concerns and their fears and know that you're not going to get upset about it. You're not going to get rattled or triggered. You're going to be curious. I would love for you to have that kind of working relationship. laying the firm groundwork of that in the very beginning. This is why I love sales. And this is what I would love for you, is to take this area that feels like, objections. They're questioning me and they're poking me in all my insecurities and they're saying, am I worth it? And all of the things that I hope and fear that anyone would ever ask to me that I hope they just don't. What if that was your chance to hold someone in a safe container while they worked through their hopes and fears together with you? Would that be nice? And then you enrolled them as your perfect client and you have this spectacular working relationship thereafter. That's my hope for you. All right. I said this was not the definitive guide to sales objections. It is a strategic overview of them, but I would invite you to visit my website, samanthahartley.com/super. And on that page, you'll see the definitive guide to winning six-figure clients. It is a more comprehensive document. It's about how you can enroll six-figure clients. And it has a video case studies of my clients who have enrolled six-figure clients, just a select few, because this is what my clients are doing. If that's something that you want to be doing, definitely download that resource. You can also get in touch with me through that page. And I would love to hear your other questions. Anything that I didn't cover today, any specific objections, I can just pop into socials and do a quick live for you on those anytime. So just let me know what you would like to know. And with that, I'm wishing you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell for notifications. And here are a couple of related episodes that will help you to build an even more profitable, joyful consulting business.